Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Fish Bytes, the Miami Herald's Miami Marlins podcast. I'm Jordan McPherson. He's Andre Fernandez. Dre, how are you doing on this off day of a Monday?
It would be much better if it wasn't raining so much. It's been raining. I thought those couple of days of sunshine were going to stick, and apparently not. And speaking of things that didn't stick, neither were my Canes. I mean, I turned on the TV and I'm watching your Gators still alive in these
Yes, they are.
regionals, while the Canes are out. Not good for me, but good for you. Have fun watching that as far as it goes.
Yeah, and also, well, one thing that fortunately is out with the Canes being out is whatever the heck that Buffalo Wing milkshake thing that Mark Like Shakes tried to put out there. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm a staunch proponent, a staunch supporter of just about everything that Mark Like Shakes does.
Yes.
That was a head scratcher.
Yeah. No, I'm with you too. Out of the 60 other, shake flavors or whatever that they've had over the years, absolutely, I'm with you. Not that I've tried all of them, but you know what I mean. But I mean, that was like, are they giving out antacid? Right after that, like after you drink that? I mean, what was the? And then that like a celery stick sticking out on one end too.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what one of my friends who actually went to the regional and got it, it didn't actually have the celery and the carrots and the wings in there. That was just for show.
That was for show. Okay.
It was basically, from what I got told, it was more just a milkshake with hot sauce in it, which, again, separately, both things are fine. Together, right. I would never do that in my life.
Explosive. And more explosive than their bats were all weekend. Sadly enough.
Oh, outside of game one, where Yo-Yo was great with the 3 home runs game one, and then
right,
and then
except for Yo-Yo,
yeah,
everyone else, yeah,
it went downhill from there very quickly.
Yep. So, well. But speaking of a team that's not very explosive these days, occasionally they are, but not enough, not consistently enough. The Miami Marlins.
Yeah, again, the offense is what it is at this point. I've gotten to the point where it's like, I watch the offense like, okay, they're either scoring 6 runs here or they're going to somehow find a way to get 5 guys on base and not score a run. And
5 guys on base. What are we? You sticking someone in between first and second, running around? What do you mean 5 guys on base?
I'm trying to figure out a way for. Well, again, leadoff runner gets on, fielder's choice, gets second guy on, load the bases. There are ways to get. They'll find ways to get the maximum number of people on base without actually bringing anybody in.
Speaking of explosiveness, your head must have exploded when you watched that insane Pensacola walk-off win the other day. That's what happened.
That was incredible. That was incredible and just the epitome of minor leagues. And we'll talk more minor leagues in a little bit, but just have to go on that mini tangent there. Pensacola Blue Wahoos, Marlins AA affiliate, 3 consecutive walk-off wins to cap the weekend Friday through Sunday. Sunday was the most improbable. They go into the 9th down 2 runs. Troy Johnson leads off the inning by reaching on a fielding error. Griffin Conine then walks. And then 4 consecutive hit by pitches to the first one to load the base and then the next 3 to drive in the 3 runs to get Pensacola to win that game in walk-off fashion.
I mean,
and again, this is double A. This isn't low A or the rookie level complex league stuff. This is double A with guys who are potentially a step away from the big leagues where something like this happened.
No, that poor Biloxi pitcher. I mean, he made Ricky Vaughn at the beginning of the movie look good in terms of his aim. I mean, he literally was all over the place. Like I've never seen something with such lack of, like, he was hitting people. You name it. He was hitting everything but not even the strike zone. He couldn't even keep it near the plate, let alone get a strike at that point. And I've never seen that. Like I've never even heard of that. And I've covered a lot of high schools baseball over the years. And even at that level, I've never seen something as erratic as that.
No, the closest
especially to win a game.
Yeah, the closest I got was last year when I went to Jupiter to do some stuff with the single A team. 9th inning, they're down, I think, by 2 runs or something like that. A drop strike 3 that would have been the final out. Got a runner on first, a hit, a few errors, and then I think it was like a hit by pitch and a walk-off walk. But again, this is also low A where it's a lot of guys just finding their footing. Again, big difference between low A and double A. But yeah.
Even 3 consecutive hit 3 batters in a row to me like that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but I can't even remember if it happened maybe once, if ever. I mean, then again, I just covered a game this year where there were 6 home runs in an inning. So then again,
Yeah.
I probably just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Again, we have our bingo boards that we'll be able to probably cross off a lot of different things by the end of the year. But back to the big league club. They went 3-4 over this last week. They took 1 of 3 against Colorado with splitting that doubleheader that they had to do on Wednesday, which it looked like they had the chance to take both. And then with that second game being the Wild, like a 13-12 final score, and then splitting the 4 games against the San Francisco Giants, a 3-0 shutout win, a walk-off win with a blowout loss, with a couple blowout losses clumped in between. At this point, they're 22-30. They're nearing a third of the way through the season. They're 8 under 500, not in a good spot, and especially with the schedule that's coming up. At this point, they're facing the Washington Nationals to close out this homestand. They need to take 2 out of 3 at a minimum and ideally sweep, considering their road trip they're about to go on with 3 games against the AL West-leading Astros, 3 games against Philadelphia Phillies, and their first 4 games against the NL leading Mets coming up. If they don't find a way to hold their ground on that, we're at the point where we can get closer and closer to saying the season's just about done. And you'll be able to say that by mid-June.
Those next 3 are doing this. Pretend this is the stake. If it doesn't go well over the next 3 weeks. And yeah, I mean, yeah, we're talking about it. There's no more, you can't afford to tread water at this point. You can't. You dug yourself too much of a hole with that skid in recent weeks, and it's like now you have to now they have to go on sustained winning streaks, and that's hard with the situation they're in terms of injuries right now and all the obstacles ahead of them. So I mean, yes, there's still more than half a season to play, but at the same time, the third wild card throws you a little bit of a lifeline. But even then, if you look at the wild card standings, they're already 5.5 back, plus several, multiple teams ahead of them. It's the situation where, again, you sort of find yourself where unless something really, really drastic changes in the next 2 to 3 weeks, you have to start looking again, as you have before, at the developmental side, what moves you can make that are good, beneficial in the long term, not just the short term, talking trade deadline, that type of thing. So, and yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're back to that point, which is something that we talked about at the beginning of the year, where they realistically at a point where they could contend or at the very least show something, because we did say that at the very least they needed to show something. Have they shown enough? Or is this season, a little bit of I wouldn't call it so much a failure, because I didn't expect that much to happen this year yet. I really thought they were still a little more away, but you did want to see them advance enough where you took a leap in that direction. And I don't know, 22-30, they still could maybe if they finish a little stronger than they're doing right now. And again, considering they're in a bad spot, but I think a lot in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be interesting next year what happens in a lot of areas on this team, because you have some pieces already coming into place of what you want to be in the long run, but they're still they're not there yet in the formula. You know what I mean? Like some guys are underproducing, some you wonder how much longer they're going to be. So there's still a lot of pieces to the puzzle there.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, I was in the same boat as you about not overly thinking about the Marlins are going to be that top tier potential, like lock for a playoff team. If everything broke right, and as we said in the playoff preview or in the season preview, they would need everything to break right to potentially get in the third in the East. Again, with the Braves being the Braves, the Mets, I still don't understand how the Mets are doing as well as they are right now. I mean, again, I knew the Mets were going to be good, especially with everything they did to bring in everybody, but even with the injuries to Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer and just all the randomness that seems to happen with this team. I mean, we saw the stuff this past week alone where Francisco Lindor is missing a game because he jammed his finger on a hotel door. And then Max Scherzer, while on rehab, his dog bites him on his non-throwing hand. And you just see all these quirky things, and yet they're somehow still 37-19. 37-19, this team. And it's just, It's finally, it feels like this is the year where every year we always say, yeah, the Mets are doing fine until they pull a Mets. And the fact that they haven't yet and they built enough of a cushion has made it to the point where even if they do have one of their Mets-like moments that they've had in years past, they have an 8.5 game cushion on the Braves and what looks like, again, well more than enough of a cushion with that third wild card spot now. And then the Braves are heating up. They're over 500 now. And now the Braves are heating up, Ronald Acuna Jr. back, and their pitching starting to pick up. That alone basically puts a stopgap on just about anything else for the rest of the division to try to crack through. And then with the Marlins struggling on top of all of that, it just amplifies it even more.
The universe is clearly trying to keep the Mets down right now, even by Mets standards, with all these little freakish accidents. But it would be a colossal F-up if they don't at least make the postseason at this point. I think it's fair to say, even by Mets' colossal F-up standards, I think at this point, with enough of that cushion you talked about, 8.5 games, 8.5 games has been overcome. There have been teams that have gotten hot in July and August and surged past them, but because of what you're saying, I mean that more in the division race. Like if Atlanta really put it together and really went on a roll, they could still come back and win this division. But especially with, I still think it's watered down to have that extra wild card spot, but it is what it is. It's there. That should at least get them in the playoffs. I mean, there's no excuse at this point with the kind of talent they have, and it's showing. This is the best the Mets have looked in a while, and that's considering some talented rosters that they've had in recent years. But yeah, I mean, it just shows you again that even with the extra spot, where the Marlins have dug themselves this hole right now, and really just the circumstances where you don't see the extended winning streak that it's going to take, at least not yet. I mean, things would have to come together and click. Guys would have to get healthy fast. And I know there's specifics we were going to dive into, but if you look at it, some of these guys are still ailing right now, and some of them are kind of mixing and matching certain rotation spots. The one bright spot, once again, has been, for the most part, the starting pitching. I mean, Edward Cabrera's finally up. He looked great in the first start. Sandy and Pablo look like all-stars right now. But that's where it bottoms out. After that guessing game, Jesus Luzardo, not that surprisingly, has not been able to get it going again. I was worried about that with the forearm thing. I mean, 3 pitchers isn't enough. That's not going to carry it through. Obviously, you need much more than that.
No, definitely agree on that. And again, with Jesus Luzardo, I'm at the point where if he's back before the All-Star break, which again is only about 5 weeks away, I'd be completely shocked. Since again, he has been
because now he's going to have to pull up again.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, and with some of the other stuff with the rotation, Marlins finally optioned Eliezer Hernandez after his latest bad outing. Gave up 4 home runs when they tried to use an opener to maybe calm him down, to maybe ease some pressure off him, not having to face the top of the lineup as much. Still gave up 4 home runs against the Giants. Braxton Garrett took his spot in the rotation, and only threw 3 3/3 innings. First 3 innings look really good, especially considering he's just coming off a shoulder injury himself. And then had that 4th inning where gave up a couple bloop hits, walked a guy, and then his last pitch was just a slider that didn't slide and was taken for a grand slam. We'll see where that spot goes in the rotation. But for me, the bigger concern, even bigger than what Eliezer Hernandez was when he was up here, Trevor Rogers. Again, the guy who National League Rookie of the Year runner-up last year, you're expecting big things out of him in his second full season. He has a 5.8 ERA right now. He's gone through 6 innings once, and that was back on April 28th. 4 of his 10 or 11 starts, he's given up at least 5 runs. When you're looking at it as for the rotation, they were looking at Sandy, Pablo, and Trevor and hoping Luzardo would be a steady 4th. Luzardo ended up stepping up. Trevor completely regressed. And it's a matter of, it seems like every time he goes out there, it's something different. It's one day his slider's not working and he can't just rely on the fastball changeup combo. Some days I'm pretty sure he admitted to tipping pitches at least once so far in one of his starts already this year, which has been a problem in the past as well. And he's just not able to get out of the first inning. He has, I think, 3 or 4 different outings where he's taking him at least 30 pitches to get through the first inning. If you can't get the reliability out of him a guy who you were relying on to get the big outings. That to me is a bigger concern than the guy who you knew in Eliezer Hernandez, who you knew every fifth starter, you're like, okay, let's just get something out of him.
Yeah.
And that to me raises the bigger problem, especially now as they continue on here. Edward Cabrera was fantastic his first start. 6 shutout innings at Coors Field. I'll take that in a heartbeat. Let's see what he does on Tuesday against Washington and see if he's able to continue that. But if they can keep Sandy and Pablo keep doing what they're doing, second and third in the National League, fourth and eighth in all of baseball in the ERA. If the two of them keep it up, Edward Cabrera can stay steady. Then it comes down to, can Trevor fix what he needs to fix? And if not, the options down the minors, once they get healthy, are things going to have to start getting considered as well once you start trying to figure out these final 2 spots?
I mean, the Trevor thing, definitely, because he's the long-term piece. I mean, who's coming in, we were talking about him as being the 2 or the 3 type guy in that rotation, maybe behind Sandy, along with Pablo. And now, I mean, maybe when Cabrera comes up, then you consider him maybe like in that 3 or 4 mix. But even still, the point is he's one of your long-term guys. I mean, your former first-round pick who was an all-star. I mean, that's the guy. That's one of your long-term pieces. That's why it's a bigger, Eliezer. And again, still, like we talked about before, long relief type, I think, is probably kind of like what you kind of envision for him. But Trevor, you have not past tense yet. You have high hopes that he can be part of it in the long run. So it is alarming, and especially the signs you talked about. Now this doesn't seem like it's something, random or a few, something that happens in a short term. Like these are things that need to be addressed, and hopefully he can, like you said, work his way out of it. Because if not, then this is the kind of the thing that you feel like you had this accomplished, stuff to work on this, but now it's like while you fix one thing, poof, here goes the other one. This is one of those situations where it's gonna really hurt them in that rotation, I think, in terms of depth. But and right now when you look at it, I mean, Braxton Garrett just got his shot, but he struggled, and that's unfortunate too, because you look at, he's another former first rounder that you had hopes for, and now he's kind of looking like another, maybe potentially down the road, maybe he's another Eliezer type that is only like a few innings guy, maybe not a starter necessarily down the road. I mean, I don't know. From what he's pitched so far in the majors, it hasn't really shown so far. So that's a concern as well. So, but again, the offense to me is what, and if you're putting in the grand scheme of rating the concerns, it's more on the offensive side still for me. And that's what, I don't know if there's an easy fix right now, even when guys get healthy.
No, I completely agree. And when you look at their games so far, they've played 52 games, 26 of them, they've scored 3 runs or fewer. Half their games, they haven't gotten above the 3-run mark. And they've only won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those games where they've scored 3 runs or fewer.
Yeah, and for the people that love harping on the run differential, that's because they bring them in bunches and then they vanish for longer than that. So,
the Marlins, as I've said at the top, it's either they're going to score 7, 8, 9 runs, and it's all going to come in a 1 or 2 inning span, or if they scratch across 1 run, you look at it and go, well, at least they did something. They didn't get shut out.
And the scoring binges don't outnumber the amount of times that they don't.
No,
and that's the other part.
No, and again, that's the problem that also leads to, again, 22 1-run game, 22 games decided by 1 run. And it seems like a lot of those, it's the late and close situations, they're still not producing. They finally got a walk-off win. Yes, that's good. They got to display their player of the game helmet, which I'm still trying to figure out the exact storyline behind that. I'm hoping to get that when I'm out the ballpark this week.
You've only seen the helmet once. Why? Because most of those 1-run games have gone sideways for them, have gone the wrong way.
7-15 in 1-run games so far this season. That's not ideal. That's not ideal. It shows that they're close, but again, this is not, they were supposed to be beyond the, we're close mark. That's what they've been preaching since the offseason.
The quote I used to hear when I was in Tallahassee about Bobby Bowden, when he would say, lose big, lose close, win big. You thought though they were probably a little above the lose close factor. This shows you that they're still firmly in the lose close factor. And when do they break through that barrier and get through? It doesn't look like it's this season, but still, what are we, 22-30, still 110 to go.
110 to go. Wow, there's still 110 to go. Wow.
Sorry to ruin your afternoon on that, but yeah.
Yeah. No, and then again, you also have to look at the key contributors. Are they contributing? Brought up this in the story I wrote for the off-day piece today. Jazz, since he had that little hamstring issue, since he's come back, 8 games, he only gets 2 hits in those, batting .077. Both those hits came in the 14-1 game against Colorado. So
right.
He's
Finally
hitting
on game.
Yeah, he's hitting .077 at that point. You can also see now that after he got off to that hot start, he was hitting .290 before the injury. He's down to .240. His OPS dropped almost over 100 points in that 8-game span from, I think it was about 940 to about 830. And offenses or defenses are starting to attack him differently. He's been shifted on about 75% of his play appearances this year. Last year, it was about 32%. So you're seeing them use that infielder in shallow right to get the round balls that he's been able to hit for decent hits last year. And now he has to find ways to adjust to that on top of the injury, on top of handling, even though I know he probably doesn't have to mind that personally because he enjoys it, handling what comes with being the guy, the face of the team, the one that everybody looks at. But you can tell from his personality that it probably doesn't faze him too much, but there is still that burden that does come, especially when he is struggling.
But again, year 3.
Yeah.
And really year 2, when you talk about a full season where he's a starter, where everything, he's still a developing player. As good as he is, he's still a developing player. I don't fault him for that. That's going to happen. Yeah. You're going to have your rough patches. You're going to have your little bit of regression after a great start. That has to fit into the equation. But when you don't have B, C, and D to compensate for A happening over here, then of course it's going to look like that. It can't all be on him, at the same time, him or anybody, any of them, like really. And so I don't fault him for that. That's all part of him. He's still as good as he is. And you talked about face of the franchise, been thrust into that role very early in his career, but he's still a developing player. He's only in his third season, only second full season. So I mean, that's where we're at. You need a team that's in contention can handle something like that, but right now they're not.
Yep. Yeah, and the few guys who normally would be able to pick him up, Brian Anderson, injured list, back spasms. Joey Wendell, injured list, hamstring again, 3rd time. And then your big boys, as Don Mattingly likes to call them, Jorge Soler, his OPS for the season still only 757. Avisail Garcia, 538 OPS. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going on with him. He only has 6 extra base hits this year, Avisail Garcia. 3 home runs, 3 doubles. That to me is still a head scratcher of how that's been playing out so far this season. That to me is probably the biggest of the acquisitions. That's still the one that I'm still trying to figure out what's going wrong there.
But unfortunately, when you look at his track record, he's had years that, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me of how bad, but he's had down years like this. So they're getting that Avisail Garcia more than anything else. And that's the gamble when you get such high-low type, production type players. I mean, Soler was like that early on too, where it was giving you nothing other than the occasional tape measure blast, and that's where, again, I know we brought up the sore spot last week about what could have been, but I'm just going to say that whole 2-for-1 rationale, the two aren't, it's not as a rosy picture as it could have been, but hey, that's in the past.
Yep, that is in the past. Should we shift to minor leagues? I think we've more or less covered what we need to cover with this club, with the big league.
Yeah, we got to go to your less and less under the radar by the week prospect there.
Yeah,
Mr. Troy.
By the game at this point, feels like Troy Johnston. Yeah. What a heck of a 2.5 weeks it's been for him. Let me actually pull up the full numbers. I know this last week alone, he hit 625 for Pensacola. Give me 2 seconds to actually pull up that file. That
Mr. Troy Johnston, who was in a very good spot. For those of you that know who Troy Johnston is, who have followed this and others talking about and writing about him, he's in a good situation because that at first base is not really a loaded spot. I mean, most teams it's not that loaded in systems anyway, but at the Marlins, it's, I mean, other than after Lewin Diaz, it's a golden opportunity for him to seize it and come up in the system. So
so Troy, finally have all the numbers up here. Hits in 18 of his last 19 games going back to basically the beginning of May 8th. 430 batting average, 34 for 79, with 4 home runs, 7 doubles, 1 triple, 19 RBI, and 17 runs over those 19 games. That also includes a run over his last 11 games. He has multiple hits in 9 of those, including 3 games with 3 hits, 2 games with 4 hits. And he was also part of all 3 of Pensacola's ninth inning walk-off rallies that we mentioned at the top of the episode. He hit the walk-off one. Yeah, he hit the walk-off single in Friday's game. He hit a game-tying home run in the Saturday game. That was his second home run of that game. And then he was the leadoff guy who reached on the fielding error before 4 of his 5 teammates after him got hit by pitches.
Yeah.
In order to drive in.
Okay, you didn't get out putting the ball in play though.
Yeah.
Again, from seeing the ball well and everything.
Yep. And then on the season, and again, it's not so in that stretch, he's hitting 440. Overall in the season, he's hitting 312 with 5 home runs and 26 ribbies. And it's been just a continuation of what he did last year. He had success hitting the ball in Jupiter and Beloit last year. He hit 300 there between those 2 levels. Hit for the cycle in 1 game in Beloit. Went to the fall league and hit just about 300 there. He's a guy who he has the power, but he focuses more on getting the ball in play and basically using the gaps more so than just relying solely on his power. And again, and also with the first base thing, he just started adjusting the first base last year. He was an outfielder originally when he was at Gonzaga and when he was drafted in the 17th round by the Marlins out in the 2019 draft. They moved him to first base, which again, as Andre mentioned, there really aren't too many options for the Marlins in terms of big league potential in the minor leagues at this point. You have Lewin Diaz, Herrera Encarnacion has sort of been a outfielder first baseman hybrid, and then you have Troy Johnston at this point, which also gives you a little bit more of options as we talked about with the developmental stage. And as we get to this little thing called the trade deadline coming up, and you look at the guys who are your first baseman options in the big leagues, if you want to potentially flip a Jesus Aguilar who's in the final year of his deal with a mutual option, but mutual options are rarely agreed upon by both sides, or if you want to flip a Garrett Cooper who hitting 302 is starting to get into his groove and knock on wood has stayed healthy all year, and you want to try and maximize what you can get from him while his value is high. This way, and this also gives you a chance to bring Lewin Diaz up. You have somebody else, you have your next person waiting in the wings who isn't too far away. And it gives you those options to, or if you want to use Troy Johnston as a sweetener in a trade package, while his value is going up, you have that option as well. It gives them a few more routes they can take.
Right. You have plenty of options there, a lot more wiggle room that you normally wouldn't have had. And that's why you love having org depth in all spots. I mean, even spots like first base where, not to call it like a throwaway or anything, but like a lot of times you see cases like that where guys can be converted, from, either a catcher or an outfielder, you name it, and play the position. But if you have a guy excelling like this, because even Herrera, like you said, I mean, he's not truly a first baseman. He's learning it and he's playing it. But in this case, Johnston, not so much, but it seems like he's excelling and he's thriving at it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see what they do next with him if he keeps this going. I mean, is he saying hi to Scampy pretty soon or what? I mean,
I think the problem with him visiting Scampy is they need to wait for Lewin Diaz to visit Billy in order for Troy to be able to visit Scampy.
Well, yeah. I'm saying that at that point when we get there.
At that point, yes. At that point, yes. That would be the logical progression there. It would be once Lewin is up one way or the other, then Troy would be the logical guy to go up to AAA to start playing first base up there. Yeah. But again, it's a matter of what happens with the roadblock that's in front of him right now with both Garrett Cooper and Jesus Aguilar. They have to figure that out. Yeah.
It probably won't be till the deadline or around the deadline or at whenever point, if ever point, this type of move you were talking about a minute ago would happen. And then because that'll open the door. And then at that point, assuming he continues on his trajectory the way he's going right now and he keeps progressing, the way he's doing. So it's a good problem. That's one good problem to have for them at that level, and again, at a spot like that.
Yep. And then just since we're on the first baseman topic, Lewin Diaz also hit 3 home runs this past week for AAA, 8 RBI, a double, 370 average, 1134 OPS, casually leading the jumbo shrimp with 12 home runs,
Can't wait.
And that's, I mean, again, he's only tied for 9th in all of AAA in home runs. Yeah, I'll stop there. And plays really good defense.
Matter of time.
Yep.
Matter of time. We know this. So.
Yep. And then just a few other quick hits on the minor league front. JJ Bleday, his 10th home run of the season. Again, he's only 2 behind Lewin in terms of home runs. Did that on Saturday. It was part of a 3-hit day. Your weekly update on Yuri Perez, struck out 6 while giving up two runs, both of which were on solo home runs in over 4 innings of work. He's at a 3.79 ERA with 56 strikeouts against 9 walks over 38 innings so far in AA this year. And the Beloit Sky Carp, and once again, love the name change that we got this year. They had 7 of their regulars all hit either 300 or above this week. The leading guy, Yanmano Martinez, who the Marlins signed as an international guy from their international draft class in 2017. He led the group with a 385 average, 2 home runs, and 6 runs scored. A few of the guys who are on the top 30 prospect list, Cody Morissette went 350 with a home run and 6 runs scored. He's up to, I think, 6 or 7 home runs this year, which is honestly surprising me because he was more of a contact type guy, and the fact that he's showing some power too, that's a good sign for one of their lower level infielders. Will Bamfield, who has seemed to have fallen to the wayside, he hit 333 with 6 RBI and 7 runs scored this week. Nasim Nunez, 333 average, 4 runs, and with him, we talked about the glove and the fact that if he can just find ways to get on base and show that he can do something with the bat, that's going to be a plus because he is the glove first type guy. And then a couple other guys, Galvi Rosario, Marcus Chu, and Bennett Hostelter were the others who hit 300 or above. So to see 7 guys from the same team all hit 300 or above in the same week, that's, again, it's a 1-week thing, but to see a full lineup do that, to me, that was pretty eye-popping when I was going through everything for my week.
It must not be as cold anymore up there.
Yeah, finally hitting the summer.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, the Nasim part stood out to me too, because that we talked about that. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but that's good to see, and it looks like he's continuing to make progress up there. And you want to see the bat come around because you know what you get everywhere else with him. So hopefully you can keep it going.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Fish Bytes. Thanks so much again for tuning in. We'll be back again next week to recap the Marlins series with the Nationals and the first part of their 3-leg road trip. I'll be out there for all 3 legs in Houston, Philly, and New York. It's going to be a long one. Going to be a busy one. With that, we'll be back again next week. Thanks so much, everyone.